What's up, everyone? Welcome to this new episode of the Flow Prints podcast, a space where we share the blueprints of our ongoing glow up. I'm Helena Morgane, your host. I'm a multi-disciplinary artist, intuitive and highly sensitive, and this is where we talk about all things wellness from that special lens we got as creatives. We're here every other Tuesday of the month, so take a seat and let's vibe together.
Yeah, no worries. Honestly, I've been napping most of the day, so it's been good. I literally just woke up from a nap like maybe an hour ago. How about you?
So on brand for today.
Right?
I was kind of forced into a slow day, I think.
Yeah, I hear you. Honestly, I don't even usually nap. Today was just like, I don't know. I just felt like it. I was like, I'm fasting, right? So I'm like, this is like the second weekend for me at least, that I'm fasting. And I feel like while I'm fasting, like weekends in Ramadan are always the best because they're just like, I don't have anything to really do. There's not much going on and I can kind of just like have a slow day. And I feel like this month kind of forces that on you because you don't have much energy. So yeah, it's been nice.
So how's Ramadan been?
It's been so like for me, I started fasting a little bit later on in the month. So this is only like really maybe my I don't know, seventh day, I guess a week. It's been about a week for me. It's been good. Honestly, I feel like Ramadan is a time that I always slow down anyway. So it's like really timely that we're talking about slow living. It's a time that like, you know, you're experiencing obviously physical restraint from the fast, but it's not meant to necessarily take yourself away from your body. It's actually meant for you to kind of focus and pay more attention to everything that's going on inside you, be more in your body, but also like, you know, the spiritual aspect of kind of like turning inward. You know what I mean? So I always look forward to that. And then of course, like connecting to God, connecting to like a higher source outside of yourself, which I think often like being hyper productive and always on the go really kind of takes us away from those opportunities, right? So like it's only like in slowing down that we realize, okay, there's life beyond work, there's life beyond the grind, there's, you know, this need for our own like well-being and all other domains of our life for us to connect and routinely connect. It's like this month is like so beautiful to me also because it's a reset, you know, it's like checking in with yourself and kind of just like doing this spiritual reset. So yeah, it's been nice.
Yeah, there is a glitch, man.
Okay.
Well, what about now? How's that?
Yeah, now you're good.
Okay. What was I saying? I don't remember what was I saying?
I think you asked me about I don't know, something about Ramadan. I actually don't remember.
Oh yeah, but I mean, you were detailing like how your schedule was during that time. But I feel like I was reacting to that anyway. I feel like there's a collective shift when Ramadan is like on, and particularly like if there's like any other fast or like any other religious celebration or, you know, anything happening around that time, it just feels like very much of a shift collectively affecting people who are, you know, within those communities or not. So I love that so much. And the reason why I really wanted you to come on, or one of the reasons, because I feel like we both have like busy schedules and everything, but you also shared something, I think it was on your like close friends thing, but
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
always
like
my friends.
but I feel like it's such a massive like conversation when it comes to balancing things out. So for me, I wouldn't say that I have my answer. I just have like tools and things that I do and try to, you know, keep doing. But so when it's not Ramadan, like how do you manage to feel like grounded or to have some kind of a balance?
Honestly, it's something that like I talk about a lot even as an artist in my work, it's not like very, very obvious, but there's little Easter eggs of like my struggle with rest and balance and all of that. And I think the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because it's something I struggle with so much. So I try to like add routines and rituals and things like that into my day. Prayer definitely helps, you know, because like we do have that structure, but again, like I'm not perfect and I don't always, unfortunately, you know, align myself with the times, prayer times and things like that. So that's something that I'm working on because I know it's so beneficial for me, and I know it like gives me so much tranquility throughout my day. It's just that moment to like pause and focus and you know, it's really meditative actually. It's like it kind of is a clearing of your mind from like kind of worldly thoughts. It's like a detaching from things that yes, we need to do, like we need to work, we need to be productive in some capacity, right? Because that's what keeps us moving. And I think that life would be very boring if we weren't productive at all, right? So it's like the goal is not to erase productivity. It's to add moments where we can also be contemplative, where we can be self-reflective, and where we can actually, like, I think it's really, really important to give time for reflection even. And for me, a way that I do that outside of just like spiritual life and that kind of thing and spiritual ritual is through my writing. So it's really a place of, and a lot of the times, like most of what I write, I don't even share, and it's not intended for sharing. You know, it's like it's really just a space of, exactly, like it's a space of just like it's like a meditative space. Like you know, when you probably experience this too, to some degree, like as a filmmaker, like you know when you have ideas and things like that, like you get to this like cathartic, this flow state, right, where you're just like, oh, I found this sweet spot where I'm almost like, it's almost like an out of body experience and you're just floating. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that I wouldn't say that I chase it, but when it happens, it provides me with this like longer standing feeling of like just rest and this feeling of like purpose. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like writing really does that for me. And I'm really grateful to, you know, have been able to cultivate the ability to get into that flow state pretty easily. So it's really just like a place of just like sanctuary for me. And then if I like the way that I work is like if I like something that I've written, then I'll share it. And I think I want to share it, then I'll share it. But like 90% of what I write is for me. But how about you? What is like, I guess like in your work, as a filmmaker, but also just in general, how do you find rest in that? Or do you find rest in that? Because it's interesting as artists, like it's this weird dichotomy because it's work, but it can also be restful. So I don't know.
And I think that the thing that makes it a bit more complex versus like people who might, so let's say that as creatives, we're going to tend to be passionate about what we're doing, whereas like other people in non-creative careers, they can be passionate, but some people aren't, right? I rarely meet creatives who are not passionate about being creatives because it's like the reason to go into it, right? And so it's a bit complex is that because we love what we do, sometimes we can get into spaces where we're just like going and going and going, and it's like you're not actually like taking care of yourself, like creatively speaking, like you're in a good place, but in terms of like appreciating the time when you're, you know, disconnecting from your art, like understanding what that it allows you to create even better, like it's sometimes it can be tricky. For me, I definitely like, number one, I love sleep. And I also want to piggyback on a couple things that you said. So writing, number one, I identify as a writer for sure, a screenwriter, but then a writer overall. And I have different, when I write creatively is a bit of a different process from like when I just journal, but journaling it's big. Like when I have something that's really, you know, heavy on my mind, writing really helps. It's not the only thing that helps. Like sometimes I'll just go take a super long walk. Like that's another massive thing for me, and I'll explain why. Um, but there's something very cathartic about it, and it's like I feel the weight being, you know, lifted, like it's a release, you know, and the it helps me also get clear on what's going on. It's like the more I write, the more I'm like, oh, this is it. It's like the core of, you know, what I might be going through. And initially I just thought it was about, you know, this interaction that didn't go well, or like, I don't know, a hiccup in the middle of a project, whatever. Um, when I write creatively, I think when I get a breakthrough and I understand something about the story is when I'm like, which
Yeah.
I also think that as writers, like, I feel like, you know, you have to be a little crazy, because really you're creating problems, creatively speaking, especially as a screenwriter. I feel like we're not just telling stories, we're also creating issues to resolve them ourselves. And so it's like, wow. Wow.
I never thought of it like that. Actually, yeah, that makes sense.
I have spent so many times, I'm staring at my wall, which is, let me see if I can show it real quick. Let me hide the mess. But did you get to see it? It's like,
Yeah, it's like sticky notes.
yeah, like all these things, all these little post-its. But I'm staring at it because all the time, like I just have all these different like breakdowns, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. But this is fully like me creating an issue and me solving it. In terms of, wait, I'm trying to put it back. Okay. In terms of how I balance things out, I feel like I've had enough burnouts to learn from them and to just see them coming. And I feel like sometimes, you know, I had like a mentorship thing where like me and another friend of mine were trying to share just strategies around that, like just to not let that happen. But in that moment, I also acknowledged to them, I was like, you might have to experience it for you to, you know, try to avoid it. You might need to feel what it feels like to build strategies for yourself and see what works. So I would say that writing is a massive tool. Walking is both a creative and like a release tool, like a release tool. I can literally go on a walk if I have something to figure out creatively, and it'll come to me. But also if I decide that it's like time to just empty my mind, absolutely it's going to happen. And I love that. And I'm a big sleeper. I love sleeping. I love napping, but I really love having, you know, my 7 to 8 hours. Um, and that's pretty non-negotiable. And it's so interesting because over the holidays, like the Christmas holidays specifically, my mom was telling me like, you need to like not be working. You typically do so much. And it's like, I do, but I also sleep. Like I'm not running on.
You're like, I'm not tired.
I can get overworked, but it's more like my anxiety than it
Right.
is me being tired. It's like I'm sleeping enough. And I know what it feels like when I don't sleep enough, and I don't know, I'm not interested in doing that.
Right.
So that's kind of how I balance things out. And also giving myself time to say no as a creative, like just pausing before I say yes, because, you know, the people pleasing, like it can just be so overwhelming. Like you don't even realize until it's too late that you said yes to something that you don't have the capacity for. So
Yeah, one thing that I do in the beginning of every year is I'll actually look at the commitments that I have. And I'll like put them into my calendar. Not like the work, like I don't have a working schedule in my calendar necessarily, but I will like, you know, add like even things that don't have a particular date or deadline, I'll add them into my calendar, and then I'll just kind of look at it all and be like, do I have capacity to take on anything else? Or is there something that I can, with good conscience, delegate or drop entirely? You know, is there some work that I'm giving myself that is just a season of my life that's passed that I don't need to be focusing on? And I think that, you know, the nature of being an artist and being a creative is that people tend to pull you in more directions than just your work, like your typical like creation work, right? It's like, hey, can you give this talk? Hey, can you do this workshop? Hey, can you, you know, like there's like a lot of different aspects, like interviews and different things that, you know, you can potentially take on, and like grant writing, and like, you know, there's this whole kind of world of other work that's built into the life of an artist. And so I'm really like, and I'm really practical in terms of my rest, in the sense that like, how have I designed my life to make it difficult for myself to rest? Because like, if I'm being honest, it's by my own design. It's not like someone is like taking.
It typically is, right?
You know what I mean? I mean, I also believe that like a 9 to 5 work life can be challenging too. Like 8-hour work life can be challenging, but I'm grateful to have flexibility in at my day job. So that's one thing. But I think in general, most people have a hard time with 7 to 8 hours of work every day for 5 days. So that's one thing. But like aside from that, in my creative life, I've really developed a lot of work for myself. And so for me, it's looking at like, how can I either remove obstacles to that work by asking for help, or actually make decisions about what work is like the most aligned with my purpose as a person, as an artist, and what work is just like something that I've taken on because I feel like, you know, it's a good look, or like maybe this will help me like expand into some other direction that I'm not even like really sold on, but I just, for some reason, the opportunity presents itself. And like, I think sometimes we feel like if an opportunity presents itself and it seems like a good opportunity and it pays well and all of that, then we should just jump on it. But recently I've been really reflecting on like you said, how to say no. But in particular, how to say no when it's difficult. You know, because no is not always like an intrinsic, like full body, like, no, I really don't want that. You know, sometimes it is like unpaid work. No, thank you. Right. But that's an easy no. That's like, why are you even in my inbox? Right.
Yeah.
But when it comes to something that seems like a really good opportunity, but like, you know, maybe it's going to be an uphill climb because I don't necessarily like, I have to like build a certain skill set to fully like do it justice or something. And like, do I actually want to build that skill set, or am I just doing that so that I can fulfill the requirements of this thing? Right. So it's just like, I feel like there are a lot of situations like that I'm trying to really be practical with myself about, and look at how can I simplify my life as much as possible. Because I think that something I'm leaning on simplicity, right? Like, I think that's what's lacking. And being an artist is so complicated. There's so many like moving pieces. So it's like,
pieces, and I feel like, you know, unless you're in environments, really plural, that have creatives in it, like it's really hard for people to grasp, right? And in a way, it's like, it means that it can be difficult for them to support us or to really understand all the things that we're dealing with. You know, I feel like in the past, early days, I had a bit of resentment around that, because I would just be like, why? Why is nobody getting it? And it's like, oh, it really is like that when you're in a different setup. But simplicity, like, that's so true. And also, you mentioned something that really resonated a little before, which is like the prayer time. I feel like setting your day, setting that note, it's like a form of self-respect, whatever it looks like. You know, that's something that I've really reinforced in myself. Like, whenever I skip my spiritual hygiene, which is how I call it, the same way that you would take a shower, brush your teeth, or whatever, like, that's, you know, energetic hygiene is so important. And it's a way to love myself. It's like, yes, it requires some discipline because I'm not necessarily used to doing it like that. But feeling the benefits that helps. That helps so much. And just noticing like the contrast when I do it, when I don't do it, and reinforcing that it is for me at the end of the day. And I don't know. I feel like there's a shift that happens when you understand like that, like the respect part of it to a certain extent. I don't know that everybody would use that word, but it's like sometimes we do it because we feel like it's the right thing to do outwardly, but then when you understand that you deserve that, you deserve the outcome and you deserve the process of that. I don't know. I feel like it's empowering, or at least it's been for me. And I lost my track, but yeah, I really resonated and I wanted to say something about that. And when it comes to the 9 to 5 thing, like I've done that more out of necessity than anything else, because I think that the most, I would say, traumatic time was doing it out of necessity at a time where I had already figured out that it wasn't for me. And so I know that can be so draining when that's the case. When you're happy in your 9 to 5 or in your, side job as a creative, then that's amazing. If you have flexibility, if you're actually fulfilled or you enjoy people's company in that workplace, that's amazing. But I empathize for people who might be, navigating spaces where it's like, I don't relate to these people. I'm doing this because I need to, and then I'm out. And whenever like that's happened in the past, I feel like the super important thing is to have those rituals where you like release the energy of the day, but also where you remind yourself of the reasons why you're doing it and where you're trying to go. So the exact same thing that you were saying about being practical and understanding what you have the capacity for, I feel like that also applies to remembering why you're doing what you're doing, right? Like for me, I never forgot that I have those goals with my screenplay, or I have this specific goal with, that residency. And so even when I'm at that job, it's just like, it helps me get through the day, the week, but it also helps me remember that this is temporary. The minute that I get to, do part-time, for example, then I'll do it. And that's exactly what I did. Like when I look back, I'm able to be like, wow, I actually moved super quick. Like I was full-time, made it part-time, like within probably like 3 months. And then I was out. And then the pandemic happened. But I feel like that's a big thing. Like just really, as often as possible, if it needs to be twice a day, where you just literally be like, okay, these are my actual goal, and that job is not my life. This is who I am outside of it, and how do I reach those goals, and how do I take care of myself overall, like without overextending myself. Boom. And yeah, as long as you remember that, I feel like you can pretty much be okay. As okay as when.
Yeah, I like what you mentioned about like, I mean, I liked a lot of things that you said, but you mentioned like thinking of it as like spiritual hygiene, like the framing of, like that spiritual life and bringing that in as a form of rest. And also just like the concept of discipline. Like, I think that it took me a while to really understand that, because I think sometimes we align discipline with productivity and not with rest, right? But it actually takes discipline to rest and to feel rested. Like the things that you have to do to actually feel like a sense of balance in your life and a sense of like kind of just peace and to support even things that you need to do to support your mental health are things that you actually have to have discipline around, right? Like even like going back to prayer, like praying 5 times a day, like that's an active discipline, but it's an active discipline that it's not about productivity. And, you're not like accomplishing like a particular, like one goal. It's like a lifestyle, but also you're at the end of it, there's like a tranquility and a peace, right?
Yep.
That you feel. And same with like sleeping on time, like getting enough sleep, 7 to 8 hours. I just recently started like being a lot better with my sleep, but I'm not someone that can nap readily. Like I'm usually, I think I'm just too, I don't know if it's like my anxiety or the way that it plays out. I just can't nap. And I also get sleep paralysis, so that might be why. Which, you know, is really scary sometimes. So it was like, I just don't nap during the day usually. So today was a treat that I slept for like most of the day. But also like now I am getting like 7 to 8 hours, and it's a game changer. But it's also something that I realize I need to have discipline around. Like I need to be like, it's time to stop working, or it's time to cut off the Netflix or whatever it is I'm doing, you know, late at night. Like it's time to like shut all of that down and go to sleep. You know what I mean? So that can be really challenging. Ramadan definitely forces me to, because I'm like, I have to get up at 4 a.m. Like, what am I doing? It's midnight. I need to sleep, you know? So yeah, that's like something that I'm really starting to appreciate, is like that discipline is required to feel, at the end of the day, to feel more rested and to build a life that is not always about productivity, but also that like productivity is not the enemy, and we're not resting to be productive. We're resting because, you know, we have a right to be safe and within our own minds and bodies, right? But then at the same time, like, yeah, it can help you be productive, but that's not the goal. It's not like rest to be productive. It's rest to be human, because you're human, right?
Yeah, to exist.
Yeah, to exist, because that life is not just what you can do or produce, and like our worth is not tied to what we make. And I think it's really hard as artists to learn that lesson.
I actually have a theory, or maybe it's my experience. You can tell me if that was your thing. We're not really taught how to transition between being artists, like creative beings, as like, let's say a child, or I don't know, a teenager, into becoming a professional artist. Like that transition, like if you're an artist from like from jump, you're really connected with that. And even like your environment, that's what people see about you, and they reinforce that, you identify with that. I think that you can, like, that's your identity, that's part of your identity. And so that's fine when it's just on the human level, but once it becomes professional, if nobody, or if you don't have that moment, that click of like, oh, I need to separate those two different things. Like, I am the human, and the artist has become like a professional, and so that's a career, and that's not my worth. Then it can be tied into each other. Has that been like your experience, like that awareness? I needed to get to it. Like I didn't realize that that's what was going on until I was just like, man, that was the moment where like things shifted and I didn't realize it.
Yeah, I think for a lot of my career as an artist, I've basically, that's what it was. It's like, because I felt like being an artist, and unlike a lot of other jobs, I mean, maybe some jobs are like this, but you're actually bringing your life story to your work. You're bringing your vulnerability. You're bringing your heart. You know what I mean? To your work. And not only
your work, like whatever you're.
Yeah, exactly. And not only are you bringing it to the work, but the work is dependent on you telling that story and being vulnerable and pouring your heart on a stage or a page or a screen, right? Mm-hmm. So it can be really hard to say, okay, there's Timaj Garad, the artist, and then there's Timaj Garad, the person. And yes, they're the same people, but they don't necessarily have to be present at the same time in the same, right? Like I can take off one hat and put on another, right? And that's okay, and that's actually healthy. Like I don't always have to be consumed in it. And that's why even like when I was talking about writing earlier, it's writing for myself is very different than writing for like writing a commission, which I do. Like when I have commission pieces, that's work and it feels very different. you know, it might sound as good or whatever, quote unquote, but it feels very different because I know that that's a job. I know that there's pressure attached to it. There's a deadline attached to it. There's an external reward attached to it. So there's other forces at play that are responding to that calling, as opposed to just me feeling like, you know what, let me just take a minute and like reflect about my day. No pressure. It doesn't have to sound good. It doesn't have to show up in any particular way. No one's expecting anything out of it, you know? So it's that dropping those expectations. And like, to your point, it can be really, we're not really taught to do that. Like, we're not, especially because the arts, unfortunately, is deprioritized in our education system. Yeah. So that's part of the reason why it's not taught as a viable career. No one tells you have to be a business owner. No one tells you about 13% HST and, you know what I mean? Charging that and making invoices.
Grab from different sources. Wow.
Yeah. It's like you pick up on that as you go and as you talk to more seasoned artists, and they're like, what do you mean you're not using this app to do that, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like, there's like you have to actually build a toolkit around yourself as a business. And that's the part of the work that, you know, I can be very good at that because I'm an administrator in my day job. I'm an arts administrator. I'm a funder. So I have that skill of being able to, like, you know, write great like emails and requests and market myself and things like that. And be very organized with it, but I fall off because I just don't have the time for it.
Exactly.
You know? So like I've had an assistant here and there. I've gone through like different challenges and struggles finding support. Right now I'm on my own doing it, but I think that outsourcing or finding people to the extent that we can, right? Because it's not always an option. But if you have access to like collaborators or support, or even if you can just like build this network of other artists who are supporting, whether it's morally, emotionally, or actually like a skill and knowledge share, like that is so critical. And that's something like I really wish I had, because I think that I would have sooner than later found my stride and not felt so overwhelmed with it all. And I'm still overwhelmed.
What's I don't know, a space or a way that you think would have been great for you to learn that stuff that we.
Yeah, I think like, so I'm a big proponent of workshops. I love workshops. I teach workshops. I still take workshops. I had a point in time in my 20s where I was literally like constantly in workshops, like just professional artistic development workshops, writing workshop, music workshops. Like I was just obsessed. Me and some, like a group of my friends. And I think the reason is because it provided a type of learning that I had never experienced before, because I love learning, you know, but the environments of learning that I was a part of, like academia, that pressure cooker, you know, type of system where you're also like, you know, marginalized and discriminated against and all of that, like, you know, as a racialized person, as a Black Muslim woman, like I just never found those spaces of safety for myself where I could show up fully as myself. And I found that in like the kind of arts workshop scenes, like some more than others, of course, but where I could kind of like cherry pick the type of learning I wanted and who I wanted to teach me. And I would show up, and there was a fullness to it that I didn't always experience in traditional learning environments. Like, for example, you know, there's a huge social component. Even the idea of like icebreakers every session and things like that. You know what I mean? There's a huge social component. Oftentimes you're gathering around food. And then the learning happens by experience. You're learning through experience, right? And you're connecting with mentors, whether it's in a structured way where you're actually paired one-on-one, or if it's just that, you know, the facilitators or the more seasoned professionals in the group become kind of like these proxy mentors for you, right? So I felt that those spaces really nurtured me as an artist, and I don't think I'd be where I'm at today without those types of spaces, those alternative spaces. I'm very much a believer in like the power of the third space, you know, to be able to really kind of help you unlearn some of the harmful ways that we've been socialized, or that we've the harmful relationships we've had to our careers, or to learning in general. And then also, like, to create this more holistic environment, where we can learn in ways that are not just about our productivity or just about material success. That's what I really appreciated. And I think that in terms of the education system, school is designed to help you get a job, right? That's kind of the whole point of that system. Is like, there's like, there are stages, and it's a bit of like a, we call it, like, you just know that the progression is to have some sort of certification to be able to be employed in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
And for me as an artist, I didn't always see a clear pathway to my art. I never saw that. I had to, it's like, I think a lot of us relate to this. You have to, and not just artists, entrepreneurs, any creatives, you have to carve your own path.
Yeah.
And to do that, it's not about learning. I think there are some things that you can actually, like, learn in a classroom and things like that, right? Like the practical things about finance, and, you know, using different organizing tools and things like that, building a team, whatever it is, business skills, right? That can be learned in a classroom, geared towards artists for sure. But then that piece about, like, you know, how do you carve your own path? Like, where can you find support for that? What could that look like? And some of it is really just that psychological and emotional support to be able to do that, because it can be really lonely when everyone around you is like, you know, yeah, like, I'm working on my master's so I can get exactly this kind of job. And I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to land. I don't know, as an artist, who's going to be receptive to my work and where it's going to go. Yeah. And a part of that, if you have like a certain personality type, a part of that is exciting, but then another part of that is really scary. And it can be disheartening.
Yeah.
And it can make us work to the point of burnout, because we're so afraid of losing our source of income. We're so afraid of not, you know, making it, quote unquote, that we end up really integrating the work, the art, into our lives in ways that are really, really hard to kind of separate our like ourselves from it at all, right? To detach at all. And that's the thing that I've struggled with the most, is like finding those spaces of like being able to detach, and to be able to also, like, in some ways deprioritize it, to be like, this is not, like, if I didn't have this, if I didn't have this skill, if I didn't have this path, I would still be, you know, myself. Like, I would still be worth whatever kind of life that I wanted to lead next. And also knowing that I can actually drop this at any point and still love myself just as much, right?
But I think, like, yeah, I agree. It's really about, I feel like, understanding who you are outside of that thing that is so important to you, which is, you know, your power to create and all of that. Like, understanding or figuring out who you are outside of that is so vital. Because if you don't, then I think that, you know, this thought of like, oh, I can drop that and love myself, like, it's hard for that to happen if you don't know who that person is outside of it, right? And so I really, yeah, I think it's a really important step. I also feel like, oh, because you mentioned so many things that are so cool. There's I feel like there's a part, like, for me, from experience, it's been like just reaching a point where I just didn't like how it felt, that being productive, or that just how I felt when things weren't working out the way I thought they would, the way I wanted them to, like, understanding what I needed to do. Because it's like, number one, I feel like so depleted, so I'm not rested. I'm probably like obsessed with what's going on, and, you know, to a certain extent, we need to be obsessed, or be very, I don't know if obsessed is the right word, but like, we need to have a certain output of energy that goes into that, you know, our creativity and all of that. And not everybody can do that. not everyone has that stamina. So I get it, but to you know, you also need to understand, like, so who you are outside of, you know, creating, and how do you want to feel as you create. Like, if one of the, you know, one of the scariest questions I had to ask myself at some point was like, if none of that happens, what happens? You know, like, just to even give myself the time to feel like that fear, or that, like, maybe grief of like, wow, if none of the things I want career wise as a creative, if they don't happen, like, so what do I do? How how do I move forward? And I feel like that helped me, you know, in figuring out, like, what do I want for my life holistically, right? Is art the only avenue to, like, feeling fulfilled as a human? Is that it? Or do I want to have other avenues that, you know, are probably creative but maybe not artistic? Do I need to monetize the things that I do artistically, all of them? And my answer is absolutely not. But yeah, those are all like such great points. And I feel like I'm forgetting another thing. And I was like, yes. And I'm annoyed because I'm going to listen to this and I'm going to be like, oh no.
I said a lot. It went on for a while, so it's okay.
Because it was just like, it was so good. But yeah, it's overall, like, that part about understanding who you are. And I think that you said something right before I spoke, and then at the very beginning, which was about, I think it was in the, like, the choices that you are, like, how you choose what you're going to take part in or not. And I feel like that's also a part of understanding who you are, even within the art. Like, what are your goals? And particularly something that I think is very much forgotten by a lot of people, what is your own definition of success? What is your own definition of, I don't know, the title? Like, should you be a writer? Should you be a singer-songwriter, filmmaker, whatever the label is? What does that mean to you? What does that look like to you? Stopping to really, you know, being still with that is so important, because otherwise you're fulfilling somebody else's definition of success, and that's never going to feel good. That's never going to feel good. So and all of that, it all comes back to, like, how I titled this live, which is like the art of slowing down. And I feel like stillness, whether it's like in prayer, whether it's like in figuring out what success means to you, whether it's in understanding who you are outside of that, I feel like it all comes down to also finding your own pace.
It's a wrap for today. We appreciate you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed every bit of this episode. Before you leave, though, we got a special request for our MVPs. Please don't forget to tell a friend about us and take a quick minute to leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. It means the world to us and really helps our platform reach more amazing listeners like you. Follow us at The Flow Prince on all socials, and see you next time.